Hey everybody, my name is Steven and welcome to Storytime. Today we're going to be reading some r/malicious compliance stories. And quickly before this video starts, I just want to say about 60% of people who will watch this video aren't currently subscribed. So if you lovely person, enjoy these videos, please make sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an upcoming one. With that being said, let's get into the stories. Caught manager stealing, ended up with a hefty raise. This happened a few years ago. When I was 16, I got my first job working for a franchise-owned pizza place. I worked there until I was 24. When I was 19, I received the shift leader position and got a 30-cent raise. Our store was pretty slow and we only had a handful of employees there, so I understood. One day, the franchise owner comes in when I'm running my shift to tell me I would be getting a new manager. The franchise owner gave me his personal number and said if I needed anything, to call him if the new manager had any problems. So the next day I'm working my 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. shift and the new manager comes in. We'll call him Stan. We talk a little more and he asks why there isn't an assistant manager. I let him know we probably don't make enough to pay an assistant manager. He said he would worry about that and he left. I jumped to the conclusion that he was going to make me the assistant. Wrong. I closed that night and had to come in at 4 p.m. the next day. When I did, Stan was there with a girl I've never seen before wearing one of our uniforms. He said it was his roommate, Wendy. She had never worked for a pizza place before, but she had just lost her job. He hired her as the assistant manager and completely changed my schedule and severely cut my hours. Oh, and guess who had to train her? Yup. Before Stan and Wendy, I worked 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. 4 days a week, then 4 to close on 2 other days. Now I had just 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. 5 days a week. No more overtime. That severely hurt me financially, but I sucked it up. This place was pretty much in my backyard and I loved my job before all this mess. The next couple of weeks are okay, except we are coming up short every night that I close. Usually no more than $10, but that's a lot. And it was coming back on me because I'm the one who does the nightly inventory, paperwork, and deposits. I brought the shortage problem to Stan and he told me if it kept happening, he would start taking it from my check. I had never stolen a penny from this place and I felt pretty attacked. He says he wasn't accusing me, just letting me know what he would have to do. I said fine. Every day from now on, when I close, I want to do a shift change. A shift change is basically counting down the drawers, which would help figure out where the shortages are coming from. He agrees. The very next day, I go in at 4 and start clocking in and all that fun stuff before Wendy leaves. I look at the order screen for the day to see how well we did for lunch, money-wise, and I notice something. It said at 12, a customer, just happened to be one of my regulars, called and ordered 10 pizzas for pickup. It said the order was canceled. They had never canceled before, so I was concerned. Quick side note, I feel like I was being more of a manager than both of mine put together. By the way, I was in the back office counting the drawers. Wendy was covering the front. I pick up the phone and call the customer from earlier. I didn't ask why he canceled. I asked how his experience was today since we had a new manager. He said it was fine except she needed to learn how to work the credit card machine. Apparently, she told him she could only take cash. He said he left, went to the ATM and came back and paid $80 in cash for the pizzas. He said other than that, everything was fine. I asked to confirm and he said he most definitely didn't cancel. So here's one possibility. The credit card machine did go down and she could only accept cash, so she canceled the order in the computer until he came back and paid, and she just forgot to ring it up again. That would be harmless. Instead, I think she's stealing. I knew if I went to Stan, he wouldn't do anything about it, so I called our franchise owner, Eric. I asked his opinion and he says he thinks I'm right. So he tells me what to do. First, I wasn't allowed to say a word about it to Stan or Wendy. He said let Wendy leave and finish out the day as usual. He said if she's not stealing, you will come up 80 over at the end of the night. If she's stealing, we should break even. I finished counting. We were $1 short. Side note again, if this is hard to follow, I'm so sorry. The next day is when the magic happens. I go in at 4 as usual. Wendy is there waiting for Stan to pick her up. Then Eric walks in. He tells her to follow her to the office and tells me to send Stan back when he gets there. Stan comes in and asks why Eric is there. I shrug and tell him he's wanted in the office. Maybe 20 minutes later, Stan walks out, brushes past me, and gets in his car. Wendy comes out next to him and tells me she hopes I'm happy. Eric hadn't come out of the office yet, so I went back there to talk to him. He said in 3 weeks they stole over $1,000 between them, and he would have never have known it if it wasn't for me. He then says, "Oh, you're the new assistant manager. I'm gonna give you $13 an hour, and we will consider more after a preliminary period." $13 an hour. I was making $8.50 before this. I stayed a few more years after this and left to do the mom thing. I actually miss it sometimes. Wendy and Stan Facebook stalked me for a couple months after. It was pretty hilarious. If you read all that, you're a trooper, and thank you. Hope this fits here. Is that the end of it? They just walked away? There's not like a fabulous lawsuit included in this story or anything? Not like any charges, cause that's grand theft between the two of them? Honestly, the only part of this story that's leaving me feeling a little bit down is that there isn't a more juicy conclusion to the whole thing. Teacher who tried to prevent me from graduating over a $5 book she lost. Okay, let's turn over your entire classroom. There was a teacher in high school who really didn't like me. I never really knew why, but she was often cold and bitter to me specifically, was noticeable. She was young and very pretty, even married a student after he graduated a few years after I left. So we were reading some general school read books in class. All had handwritten numbers in them to keep track of kids turning in books. Week after turn-in, she comes to me. Weeks after my house caught fire and I was living in a hotel. Not burned down, but a room was badly damaged and smoke toxins made house unlivable for months. She says I never turned in my book, though I know I turned it in because I remember tracking through all the cold, ashy house to my room to grab all my books. And I remembered Hand Day because I apologized it smelled a bit like burnt furniture. Melted cushion smell, you never forget. I repeated said memory of this to her and she said she didn't have it and doesn't remember that. Fine, I'll go through the books with you. Mine had a different cover than majority as was an older edition. Only a few others in my class had a similar cover. So it wouldn't be difficult, right? Oh, well, I don't have time for that. You owe the school $15 or you won't graduate. What? My family wasn't poor, but we were just dishing out tons of money for house repairs and replacement of everything deemed unsafe because of smoke toxins. I didn't know what to say. She was accusing me of something I clearly handed in and threatening my graduation over $15 when I knew the book, especially in the years of student wear condition, wasn't worth more than $1. It was $7 new. So I get my dad to bring me to a couple local used bookstores / thrift stores in the city over. Lord behold, the dang book in similar condition, if not better, newer cover. Buy it for, what do you know, 50 cents. Very common school read book. I turned it in the next day because no way I'm giving this lady $15 for old used books. More about principle at this point. She wouldn't accept it, yelled at me for even attempting to get out of it easy or something. So I went to the kindest, gentlest lady you'd meet. She literally would give you the shirt off her back and did to a teacher who said she loved her shirt. Next day comes in washed shirt she wore yesterday and gave her the shirt. She was our counselor secretary, but better than any counseling school had to offer in my opinion. I was crying over how mean she was being and seemed unfair. I unload the whole story because she was easier to talk to than any official at the school. I had never seen a gentle lady like her get angry before. Little old lady got up and said, "Wait here." She grabbed her wallet and then marched out. At this point I'm feeling guilty as I didn't want her to pay it for me, but she looked ticked. I only found out later from students in her class at the time that the secretary motioned her outside of the classroom, closed the door quite loud. Afterwards, she said she took care of it. Said that teacher had actually no authority to threaten my graduation without a higher authority in the system agreeing, and not to worry. She said how disappointed she was in her behavior, talked about her like a child. Over the weekend, my dad took us shopping for new clothes. All hours were deemed toxic by insurance, and insurance gave us $500 each to get new clothes. Being frugal, I had $250 plus left over as I got mostly thrift store or clothes on clearance. I bought her a nice shirt on sale I knew would fit and a keychain that said #1 secretary. I got along with most teachers I had. Ones I did still weren't rude to me, were actually kind after the fire. Except the one. I knew the principal's boss well too. Was kind to many students and was close to my older brother. After he heard about it, apparently instated a new rule after I graduated that teachers couldn't take away graduation or any permission without written agreement among principal or higher. Not just verbal as before. I still pop in time to time to see that secretary and only her. After my youngest sibling graduated, I've seen her less, but if I'm in town, 2-hour drive, to see my dad, mom passed after second house fire from my injuries. She still remembered me 8 years later. Still had the keychain, still super sweet, knew about my mom dying because younger siblings, and even said she wished there was a funeral because she wanted to be there for me. We opted out of a funeral because family was not getting along, cremated her, and gave her mom the ashes. As for the teacher, she still teaches there. The staff that are the sweetest, the kindest, and the most caring are going to be the ones that make the biggest difference in students' lives. It's no surprise that the secretary really improved the situation for OP because they cared. And of course, my condolences to OP on their entire situation. Why I both love and hate my job. I'm a 17-year-old male barback from the UK. I work at the pub that is partially owned by my aunt and uncle. They're the reason I got my job so easily. I love my job. The atmosphere, the live bands, the free Coke and lemonade on tap. I have 2 sets of managers. There's my uncle and Mike, not his real name, who I love working for. And then Karen and Kevin, who well, not so much. Karen is an ex-nurse who thinks she is Queen Bee. She's as patronizing as they come. There is making sure business runs smoothly and telling workers what to do. And then Karen. Kevin does nothing other than sit literally in the middle of the bar on a stool drinking a half of lager. If he does do anything, it's that he changes barrels, of which then leaves the job of bringing them up from the cellar to me. I wish I was making that up about sitting in the middle of the bar. We have to squeeze around him to maneuver around the bar. I have several stories I could tell about these too. So I've been working at the pub for about 7 months now, and I'm surprised it's taken me this long to maliciously comply. So I have a list of specific orders that Karen and Kevin have given me in the past weeks. 1. Uniform. The dress code is black with some hints of color. I wear black boots, switch between a turtleneck and a shirt and tie, and always wear my pocket watch. It's useful for timing unattended glasses on the go. Now, for the last 6 months, I've worn black jeans. However, Karen has only just told me that it isn't acceptable and has told me to wear black slacks instead. After 6 months. So, the shift after, I turn up in my black boots, black slacks, white shirt, and rainbow braces and bow tie I had left over from Pride. She looked at me and knew instantly what I had done. Number 2. Stock rotation. Now, as a barback, it's my job to fetch stock, snacks and bottles, from the cellar and restock them in the fridges and on shelves, making sure to put the new to the back and the old to the front. In my 6 months, I've worked on a system of doing it quickly and efficiently while still putting the new to the back and the old to the front. But this isn't good enough for Karen. She told me that I need to take out every single bottle and put the new bottles in first. Already this more than doubles the stocking time in which I could be collecting glasses in. So, to the dismay of Karen and my coworkers, sorry guys. I carefully take out every single bottle from the fridges and put in the new bottles to the back and put the old bottles back in as slow as possible. My defense, I don't want to actually smash a bottle. I'm quite heavy-handed. Number 3, clean glasses. This is a lot like the stock. Hot glasses from the washer to the back of the shelves, cold ones to the front. This takes time to rotate the glasses, especially because if one falls off the shelf, it most likely will smash. This is also annoying for the bartenders who need to quickly grab a glass. This is all the incidents I can think of right now, but I'll be sure to update if I remember some more, or if I happen to create some more. While there's a lot here that OP says they like about their job, it sounds like there's an equal amount of stuff that they don't necessarily like. But hey, maybe a little bit of the malicious compliance will make it a little bit more fun, and maybe that'll make up for the not so positive half. No refunds on our print cards? Then nobody gets to print. Years upon years ago, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, or sometime in the past 2 decades, I went to get a piece of paper that said I was officially smart. College was pretty standard, but I was reminded me of this story. Every year, each student was given a library print card with $250 on it, which was meant to last you the year. If you needed to print or copy more, you could reload with your own money. By the end of my degree, myself and quite a few people from our class had almost $1,000 on our cards. since our program did very little printing or copying, barely had any hard copies of anything at all. Our lecturers scanned everything online, and if some material was needed, one of us would scan and share with everyone. Even most our projects and reports were handed in online, aside from the traditional major reports which always had to be printed, bound, etc. The problem? There were no refunds on that money. As far as the admin were concerned, that money was to be used in the library or the print center or not at all. $1,000 is a nice chunk of change, even for someone who isn't a student at the end of their degree, so needless to say, nothing happened. We were ticked off. We tried taking this all the way up to the dean of students, but not surprisingly, nothing happened. In retrospect, it honestly could be that no one had any idea how to offer a refund, so they just dug their heels in. But that's years of institutional experience speaking. Back then, it just made us angry. Then, since we were about to get our pieces of paper that said we were officially smart, we decided to be smart. If we could only use our money at the library, that's where we were going to use it. Back then it cost 5 cents for each page of black and white paper. Each of us had nearly 20,000 pages of black and white to print, so that's what we did. We commandeered several computers and created Word files with 100 blank pages. We didn't want to be dicks to the environment, and we set them to print 200 times or thereabouts. We each calculated our page total individually to get them exactly right. We each choose a different printer and hit send. Within seconds, as other projects previously queued finished printing, we had control of all the library's printers. If a printer ran out of paper, an unsuspecting student would refill the tray, hoping that was why their print had stalled, and our torrent of blank pages would spill forth once again. We didn't expect this to get too far, but fate played into our hands. The librarians were all lovely ladies and gentlemen, but they knew how to search for and check out books. Canceling a print job was far beyond their capabilities. Student volunteers knew what they were doing but had no access to the print queues, only IT had that. IT was only able to come by later that day, and we still had hundreds of dollars left on our cards. We ended up doing this 2 or 3 times a week during the last month until all our money was used up. I'm sure the admin felt they won that war though. After all, they didn't give out any refunds. I'm not sure if I wasn't following along 100%, but it kind of sounded like the college gave them a card with $250 on it, straight up without any extra fees for the students, and said that it was for the library fees. So if by the end of 4 years or whatever you had $1,000 on your cards, that would just mean that the school was giving you that much in credit for the library, I would assume, not that you have $1,000 to cash out at any point. So I think that might be where the disconnect is. Unless they had to actually pay that money, in my opinion, they weren't entitled to any refund if that was the case. But I'm trying to figure this out without knowing all the details, so I could be very wrong on this. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to and watching the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the Storytime channel, and let us know what you thought about these stories in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.